to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case.
Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewbs, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Hello there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewbs and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, another day and another energy company posting blockbuster profits. Now, we go around this circle, don't we? But more and more people are calling now. Enough is enough, they're saying. It's time for energy to be nationalised in this country. Is it? Is that the answer? Where do you sit on that one? And migration, of course. Yesterday, didn't we? We saw Suella Braverman in the House of Commons giving her response to the goings-on, particularly over the weekend. Well, she used the word invasion. It has divided opinion, and that is an argument that I think is not going to go away anytime soon. So I want your thoughts on that tonight. Was that the right language to use, or on reflection, was it a little bit inflammatory? Where do you sit on that? And have you heard this? Matt Hancock reckons he's a celebrity. What am I talking about? Well, he is going into the jungle. That'll please many people who massively dislike some of his policies back in COVID, because you might be able to get your own back now, getting him to eat all kinds of things. But really, members of Parliament, celebrities, reality TV, doesn't wash with me, but does it you? I want your thoughts on all of that. But first, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story on GB News: the suspect in the firebombing of a Dover immigration centre is reported to have been posting anti-Muslim rants on Facebook. Kent police have named the man as 66-year-old Andrew Leake from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. He was found dead at a nearby service station after the attack. Counter-terrorism police are leading the investigation now, and they say it was likely to have been an attack driven by some form of hate-filled grievance. Meanwhile, migrants are being removed from the immigration processing centre at Manston in Kent. 2 full coaches have now left as part of the Home Secretary's plans to relieve pressure on the facility. Around 4,000 people were thought to be housed at Manston, which was originally built to hold a maximum of 1,600. Andrew Bridgen has been defending the Home Secretary after she described the influx of migrants into England as an invasion.
I think Suella Braverman is the best chance we've got of halting this. And she's getting a lot of pushback from the left because they know that she's serious about dealing with it. And quite honestly, if the Conservative government can't come up with a solution in the next 18 months, I think it's going to be very difficult for us at the next general election. Indeed, we've got local elections next May.
Well, as you've been hearing, the former Health Secretary Matt Hancock has had the Conservative whip suspended after he signed up to a TV reality show. He's set to appear on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. The Sun newspaper has confirmed today he's the 12th star to enter the Australian jungle. He resigned from the Cabinet in June last year after breaching guidance on social distancing. The series starts on Sunday, but Mr Hancock's expected to be one of 2 latecomers to join the camp. Now, ambulance staff in Scotland have voted overwhelmingly to strike over pay. 8,000 members of the GMB Scotland Union working for the Scottish Ambulance Service and Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board were balloted. It means nearly 4,000 staff, including paramedics, nurses and radiographers, could walk out. The union is urging the Scottish Government to bring forward a significantly improved pay offer to avoid industrial action over the winter. The campaign group Just Stop Oil say they're pausing their protests for the moment to give the government time to reconsider its responsibilities to the country. It comes after the environmental activists tried to climb and lock themselves to the gates of Downing Street. The demonstrators also tried to block Whitehall, some sitting on the road, while others glued themselves to tarmac. They want the government to halt the granting of all new oil and gas licences. Sinn Féin's Stormont leader says the party is none the wiser on whether or not there'll be an election after holding talks with the Northern Ireland Secretary. Michelle O'Neill says Chris Heaton-Harris has offered no clarity on how he plans to deal with the ongoing uncertainty at Stormont, and she accused him of making a bizarre U-turn by failing to call a vote in the first place last Friday. Speaking after her meeting, she said the public is being continually left in limbo.
I'm none the wiser today in terms of his next step. He didn't make that very clear. As I said, he didn't colour in the lines. He didn't say what his next move was. But, you know, you can't escape the reality that there's an obligation on him, a legal obligation on him to call the election. Instead, he's created a political vacuum.
Meanwhile, the Democratic Unionist Party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson says he too is in the dark, but is prepared if there's a vote.
If an election is called, we are ready to fight that election. We're putting our candidates in place. We've our literature agreed. We're getting our campaign arrangements finalised. So if an election is called, we'll be there. We'll take our case to the people. We will seek to renew and indeed to strengthen our mandate.
Now, police are searching a waste recycling plant in Leeds in Yorkshire after human remains were found. Forensic officers are currently assessing the remains at Skelton Skips locally after receiving a tip-off from a member of the general public yesterday morning. That's it for now. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You are with GB News, the People's Channel. Let's get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, you know how it works here now. I'm with you right through until 7 o'clock this evening, keeping me company. In the studio tonight, we've got Baroness Jacqueline Foster, former Conservative MEP and now appear in the House of Lords. And a new face to Dewbs & Co. We love those, don't we? Former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn and co-founder of Momentum, James Schneider. Hello.
Hi there.
Welcome,
Thank
new
you very
face.
much.
Welcome back, Jacqueline. And you know the drill, don't you, on Dewbs & Co. It's not just about us here and our thoughts. It's about you at home as well. What is on your mind tonight? I want to talk to you about energy. Is it time for the government basically to earn energy in this country? I have to say, many of you have been in touch already saying yes is your answer to that. So we'll be getting into that one in just a second. I also want to talk to you about Matt Hancock. I have to say, it almost just makes me laugh out loud. I think it's all ridiculous now. MPs thinking that they're celebrities and cashing in on their so-called celebrity status. But what do you make of it? Do you think, well, why not? If he uses his annual leave or whatever, then he can go do what he wants. Tell me your thoughts on that. And, of course, the situation with Suella Braverman using the word invasion. That still rumbles on today. Divides opinions, so it does. But do you think it was the right phrase to use or not? Get in touch with me with all your thoughts tonight. GBViews at gbnews.uk is the email address, or you can tweet me at GBNews. Now, let's get straight into our top story then, shall we? Because you might have seen today that yet another energy company, BP this time, have revealed bumper profits. Well, of course, almost predictably so, there's been a huge number of people now calling out and basically saying that is it. It is time for energy in this country to be renationalised. Is it? Where do you stand on that? I'm going to start with you first, James. I suspect I might know your answer to this, but I'll ask the question anyway. Should it be nationalised in this country, energy?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been ripped off for way too long, which is why something like 2/3 of the public want publicly owned energy. They have it in France, they have it in Germany, they have it in Sweden. They have way lower bills, and we're being basically ripped off. We're spending 150 billion subsidising bills. That's money going straight to the companies, rather than having dividends and share buybacks, which go into, to line the pockets of shareholders, go into tax havens. We should be have our own publicly owned energy, which could keep bills lower, could support our energy security, and have the levels of investment that we need to decarbonise so that we can get to net zero as quickly as possible.
I have many things to come back on you, what you just said, but let me just bring Jacqueline in before I do so. Jacqueline, where do you stand on it?
Well, I think it's extremely difficult to do. I think it sounds like a sort of an easy solution. But if you're looking at the suppliers, then you are looking at those companies who have drilled, obviously, for gas and oil.
Well, let's just get clarity, actually. Which part of the energy, when we say energy, I mean, that's a huge field, isn't it? So when you want nationalisation, which parts of it? I mean, you mentioned supplies there, but what parts do you want to see?
So straight away, the national grid, which is extremely easy to do. You can swap the shares that the shareholders have with government bonds, so there's no cost to the exchequer at the time. That's the first one. Then there's suppliers, so that's basically the big five. And then I think we should be investing a very large amount, and that should be public investment in our energy security and in decarbonising our energy system. Mm-hmm. And that should be publicly owned. So we should have different types of public ownership at different levels. But energy is the most important input in our economy, and we need to have a much larger strategic role for the state, for the public, and for democracy in that.
So back to you, because that's the point you was just picking up on then, was about energy suppliers. So that's part of the plan, to get those into government ownership as well?
Well, you're also in the ball game of companies. You've got companies like Shell, which is Anglo-Dutch. I mean, these huge companies are the ones that actually go excavating for oil, for gas. And it's very hard to see how governments can do that. It's not there isn't a simple solution, frankly. And James mentioned Germany. Germany basically has been run by a green coalition for many, many years, and Germany is in the worst situation in Europe with regards to its reliance, obviously, on Russian gas, because the decision that they made was they wouldn't build any more nuclear. And then, really, they obviously had good supplies of coal because they mine coal in the Ruhr Valley. But over the years, they became more and more dependent on Russian gas. So, I mean, there is no easy solution to this, and it's a very simplistic thing to say it should be nationalised. I think governments have got enough to deal with without then trying to get involved with the complexities of the energy industry. Certainly we have regulation, and that's quite right. But I'd also be a little bit concerned, because I quite like to see competition between energy companies, because if you are a customer, then we can choose then which supplier that we'll go to. And so I think that's quite refreshing. Of course, we're in difficult times at this moment in time, again, which is being caused really by what's happened over the Russian invasion of Ukraine and clearly what's happened there.
I've got to say, James, I'm just looking at some of my emails coming in. There's a lot of support for what you're saying in terms of nationalisation. Many people are going even further. They want water, rail, pretty much all of it, actually, being in public ownership. But Jacqueline, you mentioned France and Germany. Jacqueline mentions Germany in her response there. But you know, like you mentioned France. So if you pick France as your example, not mine, I think EDF there is 84% owned by the government. Mm. Now, EDF is actually suing, you'll know this anyway, EDF is suing the government at the moment. I think it's for £8 billion, €8 billion, £7 billion, because essentially it was forced to sell energy at below market value. It's also been sued because there's plans there for the government to take over the rest of the shareholding. So the employee share groups are now looking at suing the government as well. Also, when you look at their electricity supply, it's at its lowest levels in 3 decades there because of delays, maintenance issues, technical problems. So I would say that the example that you hold up as being a success is a bit of a mess.
Well, I don't think it is. Of course, any energy system has different complexities.
But how can you say that isn't a mess, the example I've just given you?
I'll tell you what's a mess. That's our system. How much have your bills gone up?
No idea.
Massively. How much did French bills go up? 4%. Right, so
yeah, but
they have a public system. They've decided to insulate the public from the costs, and they can invest in, as they have done, and perhaps they should have different. They should pursue different forms of energy or so on. But they have a broad base of their own energy that they produce, which gives them security, and it can keep bills lower.
But it's a false... Let me just respond to that one point about that 4%, because I completely agree with you. Anyone at home is going to want to see, caps on their energy, cheaper energy. Of course, anyone with a brain is going to want the same thing. But you say that France have capped the energy. I think it's 4%. You're absolutely right. But to me, it's a false economy, because if you've capped the householder's bill at 4%, that's brilliant. But if you then get sued for €8 billion, of which, by the way, the same people, the householders, are going to have to pay through their taxes to those companies, it's a false economy, because it's kind of, what's that saying, jam today or whatever the saying is.
Well, I mean, firstly, we don't know what's going to happen with that lawsuit, but, the comparison is we're spending £150 billion from October to April to cap the energy bills at an average of £2,500 a year. So already a big increase from where they were beforehand. So, I don't know the details of that particular lawsuit, and I don't know how it's going to end up. None of us do. But €8 billion, whether it's justified or not, is a substantially smaller number than the £150 billion that we've had to spend propping up our broken privatised system.
Can I just come in? France's energy system is very unlike most in Europe. France, many years ago, invested very heavily in nuclear. Once you start talking about nuclear, you will always have a massive government part to play in that. They don't just build nuclear plant and the government step back. There is huge control in there. So to use France as an example is not the right example. What you have to do is look at most other countries. Of course, France has got some self-sufficiency. You're right to say they have got issues now with some of the maintenance, because they've allowed some of these nuclear power plants they're getting older, and they've got to determine what they're going to do.
Okay,
if I may. So what I'm saying is, if we put France at one side, we're all in a situation, predominantly, where we're at the behest of the international markets when we're looking at the supplies of gas. We can't control those markets. What we have done, which I think everybody agrees with, we have the energy price cap that has been put in. You're quite right. There's £150 billion going towards people's bills this winter, £400 a household and £1,200 for those who are particularly vulnerable. We don't have an alternative to that. That's what we've got to do. But to suggest that there is an easy solution to this, anything that we do has got to be long-term. I supported fracking. Now, there's been a decision now that that's probably on hold again. We have trillions of cubic metres of shale gas underneath the ground that we walk on. But the opposition to that, I thought we were supposed to be forward-looking. So I'm very disappointed in where we are on that, because we have to have energy security. We have to have self-sufficiency. Fortunately, we are in a much better position, I have to say, than most countries in Europe.
There's a lot of support coming for your sentiment. I can see it flashing up in the inbox. I'll read some of the emails out in a second. So a lot of people are agreeing with what you're saying, and I get it, because who wouldn't want... at the end of the day, I know that a lot of people writing to here, they're worried, they're frightened about what's happening with their finances right now, not just on energy, whether it's the mortgages, all kinds of things going up. But I guess I'm not understanding why. What is nationalisation going to achieve?
Quite. What exactly are you nationalising?
Well, so if we take the national grid, that means that we will have strategic control over it, and rather than paying out dividends every year, so if you take, this is not the figure for the national grid, but for the big five from the decade 2010 to 2020, they paid out something like £43 billion to shareholders, either in dividends or share buybacks. If you have public ownership, that's £43 billion that can go to insulating people's homes, investing in new energy. That could be for energy security, that could be for decarbonisation, that could be reducing the energy bills of people in need. You could spend that money on a whole host of different things. The reason why people want public ownership of natural monopolies, right? The things that it's very difficult for you to have competition on, or where it's a strategic priority like water, rail, mail, energy and so on, is because it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to have money siphoned out or to have a fragmented system when you need to have, exactly as you're saying, you need to have forward-thinking, long-term investment which is going to be in some way state-directed. So there needs to be a state hand.
So if BP or Shell are not going to be around, these huge, massive companies that actually underpin the pension funds, by the way, in this
128
country.
billions. Yeah.
Who is actually going to be drilling for this energy? Who is going to be researching all of these various places, which cost billions, actually, when they're trying to look at new sources of energy? So you're saying that the government should be doing that because the government can't do it?
Well, I mean,
governments can't do that. I mean, what I'd like to see to help on the bills...
The Norwegian government seems to do it quite well.
Actually, is remove the green levy, certainly at this moment in time. We're looking at how we're dealing with the bills from day to day at the moment and through this winter. I think there is obviously short-term measures, and of course we've got to look long-term. But we've got to be practical about it. And what you're suggesting, there isn't a solution.
No, I agree we should be practical about it, which is precisely what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying you do one thing and everything becomes better, but there are different bits of our energy system.
What's the time frame?
We need to have... Well, different bits of it can happen on a different time frame. The national grid could be done with an act of Parliament pretty quickly.
Where does the money come from for this?
So for the national grid, your swap, or the way that nationalisations have been done in most cases in most countries, you swap the private shares for government bonds. So there's no additional spending through it. Some people estimate things differently for the big fives. There's a report recently which said to take all the big five energy companies would cost 2.4 billion, which is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money in the context of the total cost that we're putting out at the moment.
And then when you say these shares, you swap these shares or whatever, Jack is pointing out pension funds. So a lot of these pension funds, 128 billion pounds worth of pensions are invested in fossil fuel companies. And as you quite rightly point out, you get dividends reinvested into that and it's helping people's portfolio grow. So what happens to that?
If we take the national grid, you're swapping one asset for another asset. So government bonds yield a certain amount. If you hold a government bond, you get paid a certain amount a year. And you're swapping one type of investment for the investors for another type of investment. And that means that we will have control then over the national grid and we won't be paying out dividends every year because we will be getting that money.
One of my viewers, Charles, had just written in saying, Michelle, I mean, John, you've written in and said, are you joking, nationalising anything and let this government mess that up? I'll change your words because it's tea time, mess that up. You say this government couldn't run a bath, let alone an energy company. Charles says, we nationalised British Leyland and it was a laughing stock. We've nationalised our health service and it's a bottomless pit for taxpayers' money and now you want to nationalise energy. Charles is asking, have you got an example of a nationalised industry that's operated well?
Yeah, in loads of them, in loads of countries.
No, this country.
UK.
I mean, the NHS.
You think that's operating well?
It's starved of money in there, and it's part privatised.
No, I'm sorry. The National Health Service.
The NHS
is not the National Health Service. Let's just get something straight. The GDP, the amount of money we spend on the NHS is 13% of GDP. We spend the same amount of money here as Germany does, and about the same as France. They all have what's called mixed provision. Germany has 60% more doctors than we have in the NHS. France, with its mixed provision, has about 25 to 30% more doctors, so you're talking frontline staff, and they run much more efficiently. So we know the problem with the NHS. It is too unwieldy. It is 1.4 million people work within that system, and operationally, it is just too difficult to manage.
The exact opposite.
It is not about. No, it is not about. It's not about some of the staff that work there. It is predominantly the majority of people are in management roles or administrative roles. And what it needs to do, it needs a complete restructuring, and it needs to be operationally. much quicker on the spot, because it just can't continue like this. How can we have 7 million people on a waiting list? I mean, it's ridiculous.
The problem within the NHS is precisely the fragmentation, the bogus internal market, the part privatisation.
That's complete nonsense.
No, it isn't.
No, it is nonsense.
That is what.
You're still living in 1948 when it was set up, and it's not. It cannot be. An organisation that size cannot live, 50 years ago. We have moved on very, very quickly.
But let him respond.
No other country has got a system the same as this for a very, very good reason, because it's just not able to be run efficiently for the needs of the patient.
James,
it would be run far more efficiently at the needs of the patient if it was fully brought into public ownership. We didn't have if we didn't have the internal marketing, if we didn't have false competition, if we had the full, using the full range.
Where's the false competition?
The monopoly power that you have. If you have the contracting out of GP surgery, you have Virgin Health and other private healthcare providers taking money out.
Doctors are not employed by the NHS. Doctors are contracted anyway. They did that when the National Health came about in 1948. Doctors are not employees of the NHS. Nurses and others are employees. So there are different structures in any event. I mean, why, for example, when they're looking at drugs, procurement, why aren't they procuring for the entire nation? They don't. They all work in separate ways. The structure of the NHS, when you're looking at it, it's so top-down with all of these various organisations like NHS trusts and various committees here.
Which were
they seem to have more and more, they need to have more and more meetings, because then they can decide when the next meeting is, and they don't get the solutions right. We've looked at the horrendous things in the maternity services, in some of these hospitals. I mean, some of the things that are coming out, the budget just to deal with medical negligence claims is absolutely extortionate. There are clearly inherent issues on the efficiency and the running and the safety of the National Health Service, and they have to be addressed.
James?
It sounds like you're agreeing with me, which is fantastic. We have 43. It's broken up in 2012. They broke the NHS up into 43.
It's still an NHS.
Hang on,
43.
Let him come back.
They broke it up into 43 different units, which is creates greater inequality. It's inefficient in exactly the ways you're suggesting. Part of the strength of working together as one purchaser for things, which we're doing for health, means that we can have lower prices for medical machinery. We can have lower prices for drugs.
They're not working as one across the country.
Because that was undone by this government.
No.
Well, something tells me that this debate about the NHS could rumble on and on. But for time reasons, I have to stop it there for now. I suspect that it might continue a little bit in the break. I am going to take a break. I have to say, there is a lot of support coming through my inbox when it comes to nationalisation. Lots of you like the concept of it, you like the sound of it. I hear you. But what about the practicalities? Don't just email saying you're up for nationalisation. Tell me then, where do we get all this money from? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes. When I come back, I want to talk to you about Matt Hancock. Remember him? Well, he reckons he's a bit of a celebrity. He's heading off to the jungle. Should he be or not? See you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation, This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. With me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock tonight. Keeping me company, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, former Conservative MEP and now appear in the House of Lords, and the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn and co-founder of Momentum, James Schneider. If you've just joined us, you've just missed a great debate, actually, in terms of nationalising energy. Is that the way forward for this country? Many of you quite divided, actually. I've got to say, a lot of support saying, yes, it is the answer. I've asked you then, well, how are we going to pay for it then? Robin says, well, simple, Michelle, we'll just borrow the money like we do everything else. Many of you, though, say, Michelle, you're too young to remember the strikes when all of this happened before. Yes, I am indeed too young. I am, of course, 21, but that is a theme that's coming through thick and fast about concerns about strike action and all of that kind of going on. A return to how things were is what many of you have the worry about. We'll keep your thoughts on that one coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address. Now, do you regard a member of Parliament as a celebrity? I have to make a confession. I absolutely do not. And I think actually a few too many of them regard themselves as celebrities, and that is one of the reasons that this country has got some of the challenges it currently has. But the reason I'm asking you this question tonight is because former Health Secretary Matt Hancock has put himself back in the spotlight again because, get this, he's heading off to join... I laugh because I found it so ludicrous. Sorry, I can't help it. He's heading to the jungle to do I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I'll start with you, first of all, on this, Jacqueline. I just find this absolutely ludicrous. I don't think, personally, it should be allowed. But where do you stand on it?
Well, the thing is, I completely agree with you. I just talk about timing is everything. You know, we're having some of the most difficult times. We've also got a COVID inquiry that's coming up and is ongoing. And then we have, you know, one of our members of Parliament who thinks it's a great idea. It's obviously a fait accompli. They've done the contract. Do I agree with that? No, I don't. The whips have pulled the whip on him, quite rightly. And so I suppose I can just look forward to him. Probably what he doesn't realise is that he's that popular that he's going to be doing every Bush Tucker trial, I think, throughout the entire period. as long as he lasts. And I wouldn't certainly want to do that. So that's just a bit of tongue-in-cheek. But I think it's a complete, I don't know, a complete misjudgment of, you know, you've got constituents, we've got all of these things going on. And I think it's just a ludicrous decision, quite frankly. I think his Conservative Association, I think, are pretty apoplectic about it, and they're quite right to be.
Yeah, and when you say he's lost the vote, just in case anyone's not familiar with what that means, he's still an MP, but he's just not a Conservative MP. That's what that means. James, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I think it's embarrassing. It's definitely not the right decision. Completely agree with Jacqueline. You know, every point. I find like you're laughing at the idea of him doing it. It's just I mean, I have no idea what he's thinking. I'm sort of almost speechless in trying to think it through. I mean, it must just be, in part, sure, the money and
of course,
like some money, but maybe it speaks a bit more to what our political culture is and how our media engage with our politicians, which does treat it a bit too much like drama and a bit too much like soap opera. And so he's lowering himself to that level. He's making himself an unserious figure and having I don't know what put in his cheek.
Yeah, for me, surely you must need permission from essentially your boss, your party leader, or whoever to do this. And I just think that there should be, I think it's such a slap in the face for taxpayers. I'm paying your wages for you to go, regarding yourself as a celebrity, and go do whether it's not just Matt Hancock, by the way. There's been a whole raft of MPs that have done, whether it's Strictly Come Dancing or Masked Singer or what, and it's right across the spectrum, by the way. It's not a Tory thing or a Labour thing. It's kind of happening everywhere. And I just think it really smacks in the face of a taxpayer. I'm paying you to regard yourself as a celebrity. And I don't know why the party bosses, in case you're watching, this is Anne Widdecombe. I mean, I laugh because it's laughable. It's laughable.
But she had retired, to be fair. Anne wasn't in Parliament at the time.
Yeah, but why? But to me, I mean, you're not a celebrity. She's been dragged around the floor there, like she looks like a floor mop.
Yeah, no, I know, but there is a difference, isn't there? We're talking about somebody who is holding the office. The thing is...
Irene Doris, she was in office, wasn't she?
Oh, no, I completely agree. And she had the whip removed, and then that came back. But as I said, I think the difficulty is in politics, there's an awful lot of egos, because that's the business, you know, a lot of egos around, and I think there are some, sadly, across the piece, and they start to believe their own propaganda. And they've been on telly a few times, and then they're very famous and very flattered then when they're asked to do something. And, maybe that's human nature to a degree. But then this is where you have to be a bit discerning about what you do, because you have a responsibility once you're elected from whichever party or an independent, because you're there and you've said you'll serve your constituents. It doesn't mean to say you can't have other interests. It doesn't mean to say you can't do other things. Of course you can, because you'll get a lot of members of Parliament and they'll be doing all sorts of things in their constituencies and various things, fundraising, and that's quite right too. But this, as I said, the timing, it's going to be interesting to see the viewing figures, I think.
Just to give a bit of credit where it's due, he is making a donation to St Nicholas Hospice in Suffolk. The cynic in me would say that he's doing that to try and avoid a little bit of a PR backlash, but nonetheless, I'm sure that hospice will be very grateful.
I agree.
Don't forget, of course, he is publishing the Pandemic Diaries, a book, just in time for Christmas. Where do you stand there in terms of second jobs generally? So if it's not a reality TV show, then broaden it out. Do you think that a serving member of Parliament should be able to have a second job?
No. I mean, of course, I think there are some exceptions, like if someone is a nurse and they need to do a certain number of hours a year in order to keep their licence or that sort of thing. But basically, no, they're elected to do a job. That's the job that they should do. And we already have way too cosy a relationship between lots of sections of big business and Parliament, either through lobbying, through special advisors and through directorships, people taking jobs after they leave, having been a minister or an MP. And I think it would be better if they had no second jobs, apart from a few completely understandable
public
exceptions, like
ones.
if you're a nurse.
Yeah, so no second jobs except public service. Do you agree with that, Jacqueline?
I think it depends on the circumstances. It depends what somebody does. I think what you've also got to remember, and I was in that position when I was an MEP for 5 years, so I'd given up my job because I was with a company for many, many years, and then I was elected for 5 years, and then I lost my seat. So I was out of work. Now, I couldn't actually go back to the company I worked for, and I had a mortgage, like many people. And so you've got to be sort of, I mean, this isn't necessarily, as a Member of Parliament, a job for life, because you are in the hands of an election. Some people will have big majorities from all sides of the fence, but there'll be many people on sort of fairly marginal majorities. So I think you just have to be, I think they have to use their common sense about it.
I think asking politicians to use their common sense is pretty tricky.
No, but I think I think people, you know, won't complain if they feel as though their Member of Parliament is doing a good job for them. They are where they should be. And if it is that they do something, I mean, there's one of ours, I think, one of our MPs needs a dentist. You mentioned a nurse. But it's not just that profession. There are other things where people may, and they will spend a little bit of time during the week to maintain something. And because they also do have to look at what may happen if they have to give up that job or whatever. So I just think it's about, you know, this is just ridiculous, frankly.
Is there anyone out there that doesn't think it's ridiculous? Is there anyone? Because I'm just looking at my inbox.
Have a fan.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I mean, I have to say there's quite a lot of you are quite excited about seeing him do certain things, some of which, by the way, I can't read out at tea time.
Kangaroos.
Yeah,
something to do with kangaroos.
Yeah, you're quite excited about seeing him experiencing certain things. I'll leave it to your tea time imagination as to what those things might be. So I think a lot of you feel a sense of frustration. Of course, don't forget, he was the guy telling us all about keeping social distance, etc., whilst doing the exact opposite, which we are aware of course, not least because of those cameras that we've all had the pleasure of seeing him get up to things that personally I would really rather not have seen him doing. But I want your thoughts. If you are somebody who thinks, yes, Matt Hancock, you go and be that celebrity, my friend, whilst being a serving MP, get in touch with me and let me know your thoughts. And also, second jobs more generally, where do you stand on that one? Do you think it's perfectly OK? Or do you think, as James says, there should be restrictions? You can only do it, for example, if it is for the public good. Get in touch with me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email. You can tweet me at gbnews. Going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about our Home Secretary. Have you noticed today she's getting even more flack again after she used the word invasion yesterday? Is that justified? Is it inflammatory? Or is it accurate? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio,
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. With me here in the studio, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, who's the former Conservative MEP and now a peer in the House of Lords, and the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn and co-founder of Momentum, James Schneider. Welcome back, everybody. Jamie has just been in touch saying, Michelle, I must confess I'm not a Corbyn or a Momentum fan, but I have to just write in and say your new guest is very good. He's made salient points in a measured manner. He says. There you go.
Thank you very much.
That's Jamie for you. Kevin, you wrote a lovely message in, so you did, to me and Jacqueline, didn't he, in the break, in capitals? I won't read it out. It's definitely not for tea time consumption. What can I say? I think you need to relax a little bit, Kevin, but you did give us a chuckle nonetheless. Anyway, let's get into our feisty conversations that have been happening today, shall we say, certainly divided opinion right up and down the country. Of course, we've got a Prime Minister right now that says Britain is a compassionate country, you've got compassionate conservatism, all the rest of it. And yesterday you had Suella Braverman, Home Secretary, describing illegal immigration to Britain as an invasion. Let's just cut to the chase, James. Was she right to do that or not?
No, it's a horrible way to talk about people. If someone's invading your country, you go and fight them, right?
Not necessarily. If someone invades your pitch at football, you don't go fight them.
No, OK, but that's not the way it was meant.
How do you know how she meant it?
I mean, that's not the way that, hearing it, that's how you take it. So
that's how you've interpreted it.
OK, and that's how loads of people have interpreted it. And she hasn't come out and said, no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this. We all know that that's how she meant it. Now, it's not right to talk about other human beings like that, especially if someone is, come through some difficult circumstances to here and want to make some kind of contribution, want to have a place of safety. I think it's just, we all know that it's inflammatory language, it drives hatred.
Is it accurate?
No, it's not accurate, and it makes the problem worse.
So definition, this is according to Oxford Dictionary, not my good self. An invasion is an incursion by a large number of people or things into a place. Now, I would say 40,000 people getting on boats and turning up is indeed that. I would say that is an accurate description. Do you not think 40,000 people, often 1,000 a day, multiple boats just rocking up into Kent, you don't think that is a problem?
Well, I don't think it's an invasion. I mean, so firstly, part of the reason why people are in boats rather than lorries is that they've changed the way in which people come over. So there are more people this year than last year, but the numbers have only gone up a bit over the last few years of total people coming in and claiming...
Channel crossings are we're talking substantial increase.
Yeah, substantial increase, but the other types have decreased, so the total number hasn't gone up. And presenting this as like an invading army, that's how that is being presented is obviously going to make people think that these people are a threat to us and they're a threat to our lives and so on, so we're going to feel negatively towards them. When I think if, like, my great-grandparents came here, they're Jewish refugees from Europe, fleeing violence, they weren't a threat to anybody. They're fleeing a horrible situation. They're coming here. They make their contribution, and you know their descendants are British. That, I think, is a good thing. If people are in a difficult situation, we should just be human about it, and we should help people where they can, and we should also expect them to then give back to society, which is basically what most people want to do. Most people, I'm sure you're the same. Most people want to be looked after by other people, and they want to help other people. That's how our basic way is as humans.
Yeah, most people are law-abiding as well, though, I have to say. Jacqueline, where do you stand on this?
Well, I actually did watch the debate. I understand James didn't watch it, but I did watch it for about 2 hours. I watched the entire debate. And there was this one mention of one word, which was in part of a context of a whole sentence. I thought she was excellent during the debate. There was obviously many, many questions from all sides of the House. And the reality is that this distraction to focus on one word, which wasn't even said in a derogatory manner, I have to say, not at all, and I'm not being biased about it, but for the first time, for a long time, she was in front of the House of Commons, she was in the House of Commons, and she spelled out just how difficult and this situation is, and how it cannot be tolerated any longer. And the reality is, what we're basically focusing on is not asylum seekers that have come from Iraq or Syria or Hong Kong or Afghanistan or Ukraine, the situation in Ukraine now. We have a very, very welcoming record in this country, as you rightly say, from your grandparents and people before them. And my parents, too, had come from another country, from my mother's family. And what we're talking about now, it's about illegal immigration. I was on a cruise a few years ago, and we stopped in Albania. You can go on the internet now, and you can book a holiday with British Airways or many, many tour operators to go to Albania. There is nothing wrong with Albania, and anybody that lives in Albania can come to this country with their passport, and they can certainly come and visit. The people who are in these, well, now the size of these tiny dinghies, they're now nearly as big as the QE2 now, wherever they're getting them from. The people coming there, all these young men between about 18 and 35 from Albania, have no justification at all to come in across the channel. Why would they? Germany, and I think it's Sweden, you can't claim asylum if you're Albanian in those countries because there's no justification to be trying to claim asylum if you are Albanian. And this boils down to people who are involved in drugs. This isn't young families escaping from something. And so there's no reason and justification at all for them to be coming over. And now, as you've said, it's now 1 to 2% of males in that age group from Albania. Well, it's just not acceptable. We don't know who they are. We don't know really where they're coming from or what they've been doing. What we do know, there are gangs that have been set up across this country. They're opening barber shops and sweet stalls and things like that, but there are no people in there. So we know that that's clearly drugs and various other things. There's people trafficking involved in this, and we have to get a grip on it. And if somebody is so sensitive about a word that's used, you know, in a huge discussion that went on for 2 hours, they are completely trying to distract the public. I mean, I recall with Momentum, I have a very good friend called Esther McVey. Esther McVey was the Member of Parliament for Wirral West, and she, by Momentum, was accused of being a murderer. It was written all over her constituency office. It was written all over a sign when they were playing the Open at Royal Liverpool. Because she was the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and certain people in Momentum, and I'm not suggesting it was you, thought that she was a criminal because she didn't, or they didn't agree with what she was doing. I do want James to come back in. So all I'm saying is, let's get these sort of let's get this into context. And as I said, it's a distraction. I think she laid out very clearly what we need to do. We cannot be spending £5.7 million a day on putting people in hotels. We have to get a real grip of this, and we have to be able to extradite people out of this country who are not coming here for the right reasons.
Right, James.
I mean, something like over 200,000 people excess death through austerity. But leaving that aside...
Sorry?
Hang on, that is like the biggest goalpost shift I've ever seen.
But hold on, let me deal with this. So in 2014, about 90% of asylum claims were processed in 6 months. So the sorts of... Well, the sorts of things you're talking about, as in people come in, they say, I want to claim asylum, and their cases are checked out and their stories are checked out. That's fallen now, even though the numbers are not substantially higher. Yeah, it's absolutely tiny amount.
I agree.
OK. So I think, you know, if we're looking at where's the solution going to be, how are we going to get people processed faster so you can...
Right, but be sensible. Albania, because I'm just conscious of time. Albania, you know that Albania is a safe country, right?
But I don't... I mean, I'm not...
Yes, you do.
You're saying... So I wasn't saying I don't know about Albania. I know about Albania.
Well, you should do.
Of course, I know about Albania, but I'm not suggesting that all the people that are coming here to claim asylum are from Albania. I think
they're
that...
not.
Right, OK, and I think that what we should have is a sensible system that's sufficiently resourced that we can process people and we can find that, you know, you can find out who is coming here, because the overwhelming majority of people who are coming here have a contribution to make to our society, and we as humans want to be welcoming to people who are fleeing things that are bad.
Would you filter out Albanians? Would that be like a filter for you? Right, that's a safe country, so really sorry, but that you can't even pass on to the next stage of filtering from there. Would you rule out that or not?
There might be other factors, like you might be running away from, you know, some other situation in that country. I don't know all of the details, but, you know, clearly there are countries which are not dangerous, and there are countries which are dangerous, or it's dangerous to be a certain type of person from a minority group or something like that.
I think we have to separate out war zones. As we've said, I've given you examples of countries where people have been very welcome. The difficulty we've had is the increase in economic migrants coming from West Africa, coming from Pakistan, coming from India, that are also coming in through illegal networks. And it has to stop. We have housing shortages. We're spending phenomenal amounts of money. And you're right, we can't process them. There's just so many people around. It's overwhelming the structures, whoever's in power. So we now at least, Suella Braverman
very quick.
wants to deal with it.
Where do we find these people from? You're saying process these people quickly. Where do we find all these staff?
Where do they process them?
Well, you can hire people. We've been cutting staff.
No.
Yeah, we have.
No, we haven't.
OK, how have we gone from 90% to 4% when the numbers haven't gone up very much?
The numbers have gone up exponentially when you're looking at who's coming over the channel.
I can tell you now, this is a conversation that will rumble on and on and on. Luckily for you, Nigel Farage is up next, and I suspect that he might have something to say on this. I have to say, the overwhelming majority of people emailing in don't think there was anything wrong with the word invasion. Many of you think that that is accurate. Lots of you are saying that it's about time politicians deal with this accurately and actually deal with it properly, rather than being distracted by things like words. Unfortunately, that is all I've got time for. James, thank you very much for your contribution. Jacqueline, for yours too. Thank you at home too. Nigel Farage is up next. Nigel, good evening. What have you got for us?
Well, Michelle, GB News' Mark White's exclusive report absolutely proving beyond doubt that too many of those crossing the channel are actually criminals themselves, not just being trafficked by criminals, but criminals themselves. We debate the issue, we show Mark White's film, we ask you, the audience at home, do you think the government will put a stop to this? Because frankly, I have little confidence. All of that in a few minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio.
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewbs, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics,